You know, if you really stop and think about it, the story of human civilization isn't really written in stone. It's written in seeds, leaves, and roots. It's a story that's literally impossible to tell without talking about plants. So today, we're going to dive into the incredible science behind the food that ends up on your plate.
When you look at a coffee plantation like this, you're not just seeing a farm. You're looking at the direct result of a revolution. About 10,000 years ago, our ancestors made this huge shift. They started cultivating plants. And it's funny, in domesticating plants, we kinda domesticated ourselves. We traded a nomadic life for settled communities, which, over time, grew into the cities and civilizations we have today.
And the wild thing is, this agricultural revolution wasn't a one-time event. It was like a fire that sparked up independently all across the globe. You had wheat in the Middle East, maize in North America, rice in China, potatoes down in South America. Each one of these staple crops became the cornerstone, the absolute foundation that whole civilizations were built on.
So let's really get into it. Let's explore how this ancient partnership with plants didn't just feed us, but literally built the world we live in.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It's so easy to think of plants as just, well, food, but they were so much more. They were the fuel for our fires, the timber for our houses, the fibers for our clothing. They've always been our silent green partners in progress.
Okay, so with this massive, diverse kingdom of plants, how do biologists even begin to make sense of it all? Well, they start by splitting most flowering plants into two major groups, two fundamental blueprints that describe everything from a single blade of grass to a giant oak tree. They're called monocots and eudicots.
And the way you tell these two groups apart comes down to a few key differences. The names themselves give you a huge clue. It's all about the cotyledon, which is the very first leaf that emerges from the seed. Monocots have one, eudicots have two. But the differences don't stop there. It affects the veins in their leaves, the arrangement of their vascular tissue, even the number of petals on their flowers. These aren't just random details, they're totally different design principles.
And you can really see those blueprints in action here. For the monocot, notice how the veins in the leaf run in these nice, straight, parallel lines. Now look at the eudicot. It's got this complex, branching network of veins. Once you know what to look for, I promise, you'll start seeing these two basic designs everywhere you go.
Now, for all this incredible diversity we've been talking about, what if I told you that basically every plant you see is built from the same three-part kit? That's it. Just roots, stems, and leaves. The absolute genius of the plant kingdom is in all the creative ways it modifies that simple toolkit.
So let's see how that toolkit actually builds the food we eat. We're about to go on a little tour of the plant body, and we'll be using the vegetables in your kitchen as our guide.
Let's start underground with the roots. A sugar beet is a perfect example of a modified root. It's what's called a taproot, which normally just anchors a plant. But here, it's become this massive storage unit, just packed to the brim with carbohydrates, sugar, that the plant was saving up to fuel its own growth. We just get to it first.
All right, now here's a fantastic piece of botanical trivia for you. A potato, it looks like a root, it grows underground like a root, but it is not a root. Nope, it's actually a modified underground stem called a tuber. And those little eyes on a potato that you sometimes cut out, those are actually buds, the exact same kind you'd find on a branch. And each one can sprout a whole new potato plant. How cool is that?
Stems can be modified above ground too. Ever seen a strawberry plant send out those long runners? Those are actually a type of modified stem called a stolon. They creep along the ground, and wherever they touch down, they can sprout new roots and grow a brand new, identical plant. It's a really clever way for the plant to copy itself and spread out.
And finally, leaves. They can also be modified in some really surprising ways. The sharp, prickly spines of a cactus? Believe it or not, those are its leaves. They've completely evolved away from photosynthesis. Their new job description? Full-time security, protecting the plant's water-storing stem from any thirsty animals that come along.
So, we've looked at the major parts of a plant. Now let's zoom way in to the microscopic level and see the inner workings that make all these structures tick.
This diagram is basically the internal map of a plant. Every single part is made of three interconnected tissue systems: the dermal, the vascular, and the ground tissue. The really amazing thing is how they're all continuous, running like a network from the tip of the root all the way to the edge of the leaf. But their arrangement changes depending on the specific job of that organ.
An easy way to think about it is like a city plan. The dermal tissue is like the city's outer wall, its protective skin. The vascular tissue is the plumbing and the highway system.
You've got the xylem, which are pipes pulling water up, and the phloem, which are tubes sending food down from the leaves. And the ground tissue, that's everything else inside the walls. The factories and power plants where all the important work of photosynthesis and storage happens.
So now that we have all the parts, let's talk about one of the most remarkable things about plants, the fact that they can just keep growing their entire lives. Unlike animals, which usually have a set body plan, plants have two different ways to grow. First, there's primary growth. This happens at the very tips of the roots and shoots, and it's all about getting longer, pushing a shoot up toward the sun and a root deeper into the soil. Then there's secondary growth. This is all about getting thicker, adding girth and strength. It's what turns a flimsy little sapling into a mighty tree.
So how does a tree actually get wider? Well, the secret is a microscopic layer of cells called the vascular cambium. You can think of it like a tiny, tireless construction crew. Each growing season, it builds a brand new layer of wood on the inside and a new layer of bark tissue on the outside. And year after year, these layers just accumulate, expanding the tree's trunk from the inside out.
And those layers of wood that get added on the inside, that's exactly what we see as tree rings. When you look at the cross-section of a tree, you are literally looking at a living record, a physical history of that tree's entire life, with each ring representing 1 year of growth.
But these rings aren't just for counting a tree's birthday, they're a diary of the climate. A nice wide ring tells you it was a good year with plenty of sun and rain. A narrow, tight ring, that could tell the story of a tough drought or a really harsh winter. By reading these patterns, scientists can reconstruct what the climate was like centuries ago, long before we were keeping records.
Which really brings everything full circle. From a simple seed to a complex organism that literally records history in its own body, plants are just incredible storytellers. They tell a story of their own lives, of the world around them, and in so many ways, the story of us. So I'll leave you with a final thought. If you could read the rings of a truly ancient tree, what story, what secrets of the past do you think it would tell?